I'm here hosting VM's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar we're pretty excited about, and I know a lot of you are hungry for this information. It's titled The Most Common SEO Problems Causing Penalties in 2014, and will be presented by our very own SEO specialist from Vertical Measures, Brenna Baldoff. Brenna works in developing the rank and reach of each of our clients' websites by optimizing the on and off-page aspects. She also helps each client to balance the content and necessary bits of code to create a well-ranking and converting site, which ultimately increases sales and traffic. Before we get started and I hand over the presentation to Brenna, I do have a couple housekeeping items to note. Today's webinar will be available for viewing by tomorrow, and we'll send out an email to everyone with a link to both the video and the presentation slides so you can review. We'll also be happy to answer any questions, so if you take a peek at your webinar interface, you'll see a question applet where you can send anything you'd like me to ask Brenna at the end of her presentation. You can also reach us on Twitter using the hashtag VMWebinar. Any questions we don't get to, we'll be sure to try and answer via email afterwards. And if you're having any technical problems, I always find the best thing to do is just reconnect after signing off. So go ahead and sign out and then come back on, and usually the problems are remedied. If not, go ahead and shoot me a chat message, and I'll help as much as I can. So with all my notes complete, I will go ahead and hand it off to our presenter, Brenna Baldoff.
Thanks for the intro, Quinn. Can everyone hear me all right? I hope so.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone, for coming today. I'm pretty excited to get started. So, as Quinn said, I'm an SEO specialist here at Vertical Measures, and I hope we can help you all avoid some pretty common problems that are causing penalties. So, why is it important that you should avoid a penalty? As you can see, it's kind of a big deal. You can lose traffic just overnight. And as we all know, traffic is one of the most important metrics that we use when measuring how successful our website is. And if your traffic goes down, it can mean a loss monetarily. It can mean you lose the opportunity for branding. If you're not showing up in the search results, how are people going to find you or find your service or utilize you? It becomes very difficult when you're in a penalty because it's just the opportunity is taken away from you. So, without further ado, here's our agenda. We're going to go over the types of penalties, the most common penalties, the common mistakes resulting in penalty, some tips for overcoming penalties, and some tools for overcoming penalties. I'm going to try to make this as actionable for you as I can because I know that's what we all want out of webinars. So the types of penalties. There are two types. There are the site-wide actions, which impact the entire site. So these are going to drop your traffic. The first slide that I showed with the L drop, that was the result of a site-wide penalty. That affects your entire site. It's going to affect your rankings. It affects your impressions very quickly. You'll just drop off the board. Whereas the partial match penalty only affects certain pages or sections on your website. It is hard to discover which pages are under penalty, but it doesn't drop traffic quite the same degree. In some instances, a site-wide penalty is actually easier to deal with because you know the problem is across the board, whereas a partial, you have to kind of do some digging into where you think the problem actually might be. So some types of penalties. You can have a site-wide or a partial of either of these. It just depends on which severity Google thinks your site needs. So the links penalties. Unnatural links to your site is where it will affect your rankings, and you'll kind of see threads of link schemes. This means that you participated in something spammy possibly, or you are a victim of negative SEO. This one, Google thinks you are definitely guilty. Versus the next one, impacts links, pretty much the same thing, except Google somehow determines it's not going to affect your rankings, and they see you as primarily innocent in all of this. So you could have been the victim of negative SEO, you could have hired a poor contractor, whatever they're using to determine it, the impact links will not affect your rankings versus the first one will. And then unnatural links from your site, that is where Google sees spammy or deceptive links on your site linking to someone else. And that, of course, is purely up to you unless you've been hacked. So other types of penalties that don't have to do with links are a hacked site, a spammy markup, thin content, pure spam, user-generated spam, cloaking, hidden text, and spammy free hosts. Now, most of them are fairly self-explanatory. A hacked site, this is a pretty serious penalty because Google doesn't want to show a bad or hacked site in the search results. So the reason they give you a penalty is more or less a heads up to say, hey, just so you know this is happening. They're not trying to purposefully take you out of the index. They just want to have their end user not end up on a page selling some kind of illegal drugs or something ridiculous like that. Versus a spammy or structured markup, they give you that penalty for the reason of when you have all of that data on the page, it really slows down what the crawler has to go through every time it's serving up that page. And that can result in a bad user experience. It just slows it down. And they want everything to be as light and efficient as possible. So when they're giving you that penalty, it's more of a, hey, you've really got to clean things up because you're doing something spammy versus it could be potentially dangerous. So as you can see, there are a variety of reasons why they might give you each of these penalties, but they all have the same end goal, which is to make you focus on your website and just let you know something's amiss here and you've really got to take a look. So the most common penalties that we see, definitely the first one, partial match unnatural links to your site. We see that it's the most common penalty that walks into our door. And then the second most common is the partial match hacked site. Now, why are these both the most common? Probably because they're passive. You can't really know that it's happened. You only have the shreds of evidence that are left. So you don't know when someone built those spammy links or when your site was hacked. You only know that those links exist, or you have some piece of weird code on your site that you yourself didn't put there. It may not have been anything you specifically did, but it could have been someone at your company or someone else outside of your company who just wanted to take you down. It could have been a competitor. It could be really anyone. But it can go unrecognized for a long time because those aren't things that most people are normally checking. The intentions are also usually to game the system. So with your unnatural links, it used to be thought that the more links you had, depending on where they came from, it could have increased your rankings. We know that now spammy links are not really that helpful, but before it's coming back to bite those poor SEOs in the butt, if you will. And then a hacked site also, that has the intention of gaming the system for the hacker. So that could be someone who says, oh, this site is ranking really well. I want to inject my piece of malicious code on there so that it shows up when people are Googling X, Y, and Z. So it's really just to make sure that the penalty is saving people on the end front from incurring something malicious. So the most common mistakes. We're going to be on this slide for a little bit of time. The first one, and definitely the largest mistake that we see, is outdated knowledge. So as I said, people used to think that just getting thousands of links from a foreign website would be a wonderful way to increase rankings. And yeah, it used to work. But if you've been paying attention at all for the last 2 to 3 years, you'll see that that's not how it really works anymore. Now you want high, authoritative, good, natural links. So the people who have been building all those spammy links are now getting penalties for having spam links in their backlink profile. Unfortunately, it's the same with keyword stuffing. That used to work wonderful a few years ago, and now, unfortunately, it looks super spammy. The message here is if you think your knowledge is updated, go and check. It's not hard to do a little search for keyword stuffing and see what's popping up. You just want to make sure that you're not messing up just because you think you're right and you're not. We see it, unfortunately, a lot. Also, site markup has changed. There's 1,000 different rich snippets you should add. It doesn't mean you have to add them all. Not knowing your own site. This is, unfortunately, another common problem that we have. Websites are not a build it and forget it kind of thing. You need to look at your site. You need to update your site. You need to know what the structure is, the user experience, the canonical pages, the keywords, the granular stuff, which affects SEO on the most basic level. It's unfortunate when we find someone who comes to us with a penalty and we say, okay, which pages of your site are most important or which drive the most traffic, and they just have no idea. It's hard for us to help you once you've already been penalized. But if you can come to us with a baseline level, it helps us to kind of take the temperature of the site and see where things might have gone awry. If you're on a WordPress, one of the most basic things you can do is install an SEO plugin, such as All-in-One or Yoast. And with those, you can plot your keywords. It's also very easy to hook up analytics into those. If you are looking at your keywords, you can say, okay, I've got some cannibalization here, or I'm keyword stuffing a lot of these. Maybe I should not do that. It just helps you recognize patterns, which is a large part of SEO. It's also important when you're getting to know your site that you're looking at your backlinks. At least every other month, you should be pulling your backlink profile and making sure that there's not too many links that just look out of the ordinary. If you are doing a link building campaign, you know what types of links to expect. If you have an agency doing a link building campaign, you know which links are coming in. But if you're the victim of a backlink attack, then you might see thousands of links coming in that you're not sure where they came from. Unfortunately, people don't know that they have all these bad backlinks, and then when they get a penalty, they say, oh, where did these come from? If you have a baseline, again, it's easy to know about when it happened, and it's easier when you're writing your reconsideration to let Google know it happened between X and Y, and they can look into it a little bit more further. Perhaps there's some additional clues they might have on their end. But if you don't know the timeline, then unfortunately there's less that they can do to help you. Not visiting your own site. Again, websites are not a set it and forget it. You should be actively Googling yourself and actively clicking on your own keywords and making sure that you are looking to find what the visitor is visiting. If you don't act like a customer, how can you relate to the customer? Unfortunately, a lot of people just have no idea what the user experience is on their website. One way that this helps you is when you have a hacked site, you might not get a notification. You might not have anything installed that tells you, hey, you've got a notification. So if you're actively going to your website, you can see, oh, there's a Viagra link that pops up when you go to my website. That's not so great. But if you're never looking and no one ever tells you, you'll never find it. Not verifying work from agencies. So this one, and I hate to say it, but there are a lot of snake oil salesmen SEO agencies out there. When you start to work with a company, you need to build that relationship. You need to understand what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it. If they're doing it for sheer numbers in link building, you don't want to be a part of that. You just need to be able to ask them questions and let them explain to you why it's a good idea. And I'm not saying don't trust an agency. I'm just saying let them do their work and verify. Learn about it yourself. See if what they're actually doing is worth your time. And I can only hope that, yes, it is worth your time. And if you work with a reputable agency, it will be a wonderful experience, and you can have a great relationship. But there are a lot of bad agencies out there, unfortunately, who will just build you 1,000 links from a foreign site, and you might get a penalty, unfortunately. And the very last thing, which ties the whole thing together, is a lack of education. So find a few reputable SEOs out there. They all have blogs. They all have Twitter. They all have Google Plus profiles. They all talk to each other. They do Hangouts. They do webinars. Just follow them. And even if you just look once a month and spend 45 minutes to an hour once a month absorbing everything you can that's happened in the industry, you'll be far better off than someone who never spends any time looking at it. For instance, if you didn't see the page title update that happened a few months ago, your page titles are too long now, and down the road that could result in a penalty. If you didn't know that panda or penguin or hummingbird happened, you're probably still doing all of those spammy things, and those algorithmic penalties can trigger manual penalties. So it's really just about learning and absorbing that information and then working it out on your website and how it applies to you. Don't be afraid to tweet those SEOs questions or ask them in their webinar. Feel free to ask questions. Just try to build a relationship with them. And the more that you kind of follow the personalities that you like, the better you'll absorb the message. So overcoming penalties. The first thing that I always recommend when we get a new client who has a penalty is to take a deep breath. It can be extremely overwhelming when you find out you have a penalty. You see that L drop in your analytics, you might freak out, and that's perfectly normal. You don't know how long you're going to be in a penalty, but you can't overcome it if you're too busy panicking. The next step is to open up your Webmaster Tools and assess which kind of penalty you have. So if you go under Search Traffic in Google Webmaster Tools, you'll see a little thing that says Manual Actions. If you click that, it'll take you into this screen. This particular client had a site-wide and a partial match. So they have 2 manual actions, which can happen. But it only affects some of their incoming links, this particular one, which lets us know that it's a particular page or a few pages on their website that are being affected. The nice thing about what Google has done here is there's always that little Learn More right above Request to Review, where you can actually click in and see the entire reasoning that they give this penalty out. They have a nice built-out page. They usually have videos that say, okay, what does unnatural links to your site mean? So in case you don't feel like any information on the web is reliable, you can go right there, straight from the horse's mouth, and it will let you know. So the next thing you're going to want to do is calculate the scope of the fix. If it's a partial penalty, you have to try to understand which pages it's affecting. If it's a site-wide penalty, prepare to get really familiar with your site because guess what? It's affecting 100% of your pages. For unnatural links, you're going to want to download your links from Google Webmaster Tools and your backlink data of choice, be it Majestic, OpenSite, Ahrefs. And obviously, the more links you've got, the more time it's going to take to go through. If you have more pages on your site, you're going to want to use a tool to scan through all of your pages and map out which ones are under there. If you've got the partial, you're going to want to go into Google Analytics, look at your traffic, and try to find which pages have had the most significant drop over a period of time. Those are probably going to be the pages which are affected. The more pages that are affected, the larger the scope of the project is. So once you understand that, you're going to want to understand your resources. So is it just you who's trying to get out of this penalty? Or do you have a team of SEOs that work with you? Are you part of an agency that can help you? Is there anyone else who is on your side? It can be a long and tedious process if you are unfamiliar with what's going on your site, which is why we always recommend if you've got that baseline, you can understand more quickly where you've got to go and how many resources you need. Reviewing links, if it's a link-based penalty, that can be a terrible process. You have to understand not only what makes a good link, but how to remove those links, and how to go in and write your reconsideration request, and how to go in and prepare a disavow file. So it's super important that you know who can pitch in. And number 5, definitely ask for help. Being in a penalty can be a very scary thing. You might be experiencing a loss of money because you've been in a penalty for X amount of time, or you may not experience any loss of money if you've got a well-rounded website, you're doing other media campaigns, etc. It's completely individual. So you're going to want to ask even a friend to read over your reconsideration request. Make sure your spelling is right, your grammar is right, that it makes coherent sense, because an actual person on the other side is going to be reading your reconsideration request. So you want to make sure that it makes sense. The easier it is for them to understand, the easier it is for the Googler to get you out of a penalty. Google also is a great source of help. So if you can't find anything from them that helps you explain how to get out of a penalty or what penalty you're in, if you can't find it on blogs or social media, or no one out there can help you, you can ask Google. We actually had an instance here where one of our clients was given a set of links as an example that didn't really make sense. And so we went into Webmaster Tool Central and we said, hey, can you explain, why you picked these links? They seem like good links. We shouldn't be penalized for these. And they actually told us, they said, oh, you're right, that's a bad example. Don't disavow those. So if we had gone ahead and not asked them, we would have disavowed a set of really wonderful links. Unfortunately, it can happen. And then always feel free to contact an agency. If they can't help you for a little bit of time, feel free to build a relationship with them. Agencies have spent time and money scaling their processes. They can probably do it a lot quicker and a lot faster than you can. Unfortunately, there are some agencies out there who do a job not all the way through, and that can happen. But if you are in the midst of having to review 1,000 backlinks by yourself, that can take a really long time, 8 or more hours. If you don't have the kind of time to dedicate to that and you need to get out of a penalty fast, I recommend contacting your local SEO agency. So doing a site analysis. If you've got any kind of penalty which revolves around your website, which all of them do, but if it's mainly on-page and not links-based, you're going to want to open up Webmaster Tools and Analytics first. Here I'm assuming that you have both of them installed and plugged in and you've had them going for a while. That's going to be step one. When you get a website, you should have Webmaster Tools and Analytics installed just so that you can be continually tracking and taking the temperature and making sure that everything is going smoothly and as planned. Webmaster Tools is great. They'll show you if you have rich snippets that are out of control or if there's any particular HTML improvements they can do for your site. It's a wonderful tool, great to use. And Analytics, again, can help you discover which pages on your site are doing the best or the worst or might be under penalty. Some third-party tools that we recommend using, Moz, they have a wonderful toolbar. You can find out the domain authority and the page authority, which are great metrics to use when reviewing your own site in addition to competitor sites. You can see all of your meta descriptions in there, your meta tags for each page. It's a user-friendly thing, and it's absolutely free. SEMrush is wonderful to gauge how you are in the industry, how you're performing against your competitors. So you can actually go in there and type in any competitor's name and see what their estimated search engine traffic is. If theirs follows a similar line to yours, try to figure out what they're doing similarly to what you're doing. Study their backlinks, study your backlinks. If you've got backlinks from similar spots, well, then you know where the problem is. But if in the industry your competitors are doing just fine and you're dropping off, then perhaps it's a penalty that only you have, and you should take note of what they're doing, and hopefully doing some of the good things can help you get out of your penalty. And the last one we recommend is Screaming Frog. This is a great tool if you need to understand what every URL on your site is, or what every canonical page is, or what every meta description is. It catalogs your site and spits it out in an easy to chunk up and datify way. You can export all of your URLs, all of your meta descriptions, all of your canonical tags. It makes it really easy to discover patterns that you might have, especially with duplicate content. So if you have to do some link analysis, it can get a little hairy. So we first recommend using Google Webmaster Tools. The only way to understand what Google is seeing is to use their proprietary tools. It gives us the best kind of insight that we can get without actually asking the Googler. So Webmaster Tools data is not always 100% up to date. It's been known to be 5 months to 6 months behind, if not more. So links that you see in there might not actually exist anymore, but Google still thinks they are. Just something to be aware of. But that is the very first place to start. It's absolutely free. You can download a great list of links from there. And then some other third-party tools that you can use. Majestic SEO, absolutely wonderful tool. I highly recommend it. You can download all of your links. You can chunk them 100 different ways. It'll show you when the links were deleted, when they first found the links, if they're authoritative in a certain category. It can help you understand which links are a priority. Open Site Explorer, another one put out by Moz, great company. They will let you do 3 free reports, and you can download, I think it's up to 20,000 URLs. It'll show you domain authority, page authority, some really helpful metrics to help you understand, again, which links are important. Ahrefs, wonderful, wonderful tool. They will show you your link velocity. So that is a nice graph of how quickly you're gaining links or losing links. If you haven't been building links and you haven't put out any spectacular content and you see a spike in how many links you have, that could be a sign of something malicious happening. Maybe someone is building links for you and you didn't ask them to. You could be the victim of a negative SEO attack, or someone found your content and thought it was really great, and it would be nice to thank them. So Ahrefs is a great way to go in there and understand how quickly you're actually gaining or losing links. And then when you're actually trying to analyze the links that you're getting from these three companies, Link Research Tools and Link Detox are one of the tools that we use here. You can upload your list of links right into their little user interface, and it'll spit out a thing that says either healthy, suspicious, or toxic. So that means that the individual link that is on that page is either a good link, a medium link, or a really bad link. It's very easy to use. If you feel like looking into that, feel free to contact Link Research Tools, and they can help you get started. It is a little bit tricky to sign up for, but we highly recommend it if you are short on time. So just know, if you are in a penalty, that recovery is possible, and it normally doesn't take that long. In the first graph here, you can see this is a spit out from Google Analytics. This client was in a penalty for quite some time. But once we submitted the reconsideration request, their traffic bounced back fairly quickly. Just goes to show you, if you can put in the time and effort, you can more than make up for the hand that you were dealt from your penalty. Cleaning up your site is difficult, but it is well worth your time. And again, in the graph below that, you'll see the total number of indexed pages. This client was only in a penalty for 40-ish days because they came to us very quickly. We were able to diagnose the problem. We had been kind of talking to them and looking at their links. They were just able to give us 100% scope of the project, gave us all their backlinks, let us have complete control. We were able to upload the disavow in February, and they were back up and running very quickly. The total number of index pages skyrocketed, and they're back on top of the SERPs now. If you need some help getting out of a penalty, this is one of the things that we've put together. It is the complete Google Penalty Recovery Kit. It's a free guide. It's got some helpful hints in there, a little PDF of what you should be doing, and then a nice disavow file, what that looks like, the TXT file, and also a reconsideration request example. Those are awesome because you can't find those many other places online, and it's really difficult to understand unless you can actually see an example. So you can get that from our website or Google the complete Google Penalty Recovery Kit from Vertical Measures, and you'll see it in there. I think we've got some time for questions.
Yeah, we have a few questions, and if anyone else has any questions to ask, go ahead and type those in now or tweet us with the hashtag VMWebinar. So our first question is from Christy. She asks, how do you check to see if an internal link is preventing a site from ranking well, like site-wide exact match anchors, for example?
If an internal link?
Yeah, how do you check to see if an internal link is preventing the site from ranking well?
If by internal, Christy, you just mean that it is linking to yourself from yourself, that should not be affecting your rankings at all. You can use exact match internally, and it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, great. And then a couple of people actually had asked if you could please repeat the names of the WordPress SEO plugins you mentioned.
Yeah, of course. Yoast, Y-O-A-S-T. Theirs is wonderful, highly recommend, and all-in-one. I think it's called all-in-one SEO pack now, something similar. If you Google either of those, they should come up. They're both awesome. If you get all-in-one, just make sure you're getting the latest version of the plugin. They did have a patch that they just put out. There was some security flaws earlier on in the year. Just make sure you're getting the most up-to-date version, and those are awesome, both of them. Highly recommend.
Thanks. And then on to external links. So someone had asked, some internal links to our website look questionable. How can we go about deleting or removing these links?
I'm guessing they meant external when they said internal. But if you see spammy links linking to you, the best thing to do is make a sheet, and it should say the URL, where they're linking to on your page, and the anchor text. And what you want to do is just try and find contact information for those people. So go to those websites and try and use the Contact Us page or look them up in the Who Is registry and just say, hey, I noticed that you are linking to us. Thanks for linking to us, but we're not sure that we want to have this link up here anymore. And just try to be really polite and go out of your way to kind of not make them mad, and just ask them to take the link down. Some webmasters are more than willing to, especially if it's a legitimate site and it's not just a link building site. If all else fails and you can't get them to take the link down, you can always submit a disavow file through Google Webmaster Tools.
And I know we have an example of the disavow file in the recovery kit too, if anyone's wondering what that actually looks like. We have another question from Mark. He asks, how important is link building for brand new websites? Also, if the site is 10 years old, how important is link building for that site?
Well, links aren't going away anytime soon. Matt Cutts put out a recent video, and he basically said links are not losing importance. Link building is one of those things that if done right, it's extremely valuable. But if done mediocre, it can hurt you more than help you. So in either of those cases, whether it's a new site or an old site, I would say be extremely picky about the links that you're getting. One great link is better than 10 mediocre links. So for a new site, be extra picky. Just let people know. Try to put out great content and get your links that way. You're not going to have any brand mentions that you can grab. But with a site that's 10 years old, you might have brand mentions out there that are just sitting around waiting for a link to be built. So what you would do for those is just go out and find Google. Go out into Google and type in the brands, see if there's anyone out there building a link. It's pretty easy to ask. Links are the primary source of rankings, and that's not going away.
And I know even internally we've kind of been changing the phrase, and I've seen it elsewhere too, to link earning. So not so much link building, but link earning. And I think you mentioned a great point about it's all about the content. And, you know, are you creating the great content that attracts the links and earns you the links kind of naturally? Could you speak anything on kind of that new paradigm?
Yeah, of course. So the whole SEO world has shifted. It's all about, like you said, Quinn, content, creating great content that people want to find. You know, Google cares 100% about the end users. They really don't care about webmasters, unfortunately. They have said time and time again they want to be serving up the best content to the end user, and the website that produces that best content is going to rank for that keyword. It's the same thing with links. If you're producing the best content, you're going to get the best links. If you're a small website and you produce great content, you've just got to work a little harder to get it out there. But that's the primary way that people are going to link to you. If you think about it, do you ever share something that's not so great? No, you never put that on Facebook. You never tell your friends about it. You never email it to your mom, etc. You always share the good stuff. It works exactly the same way with links.
Question from Dave. This is kind of going back to some of the other webinars I know we had before, but could you speak a little bit about algorithmic penalties and how to recover from those?
So those are a whole nother ball of wax. Those are a little bit more complicated, unfortunately. And I know we did do a webinar that spoke specifically about that, and that should be on our website. But algorithmic penalties, they are kind of tricky. You have to kind of look for correlation in dates of drops in traffic and analytics. So if you look up the specific dates of Panda or Penguin refresh or any other algorithmic penalty that's had. And I know Moz and Search Engine Journal both have lists of those dates, but look in your analytics for specific drops. And then once you see a correlating drop in date with a correlating drop in traffic, you can look up what the penalty is about and try to see if you can put that together with what's happening on your site. For example, if you see that it correlates with the link building update, you're going to want to say, okay, well maybe I've got link building issues, and go in and look at your backlinks. Unfortunately, there's nowhere to submit and say, hey, I cleaned this up, I tried to be better. But you can do a disavow file even if you don't have a manual penalty. You can disavow for algorithmic penalty, but there's no hard and fast rule of knowing that it's going to work.
Another question about platforms. I got a few of those that came in. Which is better to build a new site on that is SEO friendly? Do you have a platform that you choose like WordPress or Joomla that is better than the other?
It all really depends on who is going to be using it. If you are going to have a bunch of people adding content and getting their hands in it and they're not friendly with the web at all, I would definitely recommend WordPress, even though it does have vulnerabilities. But if you've got people who are more savvy, you can go for anything else. It really depends on the kind of website you're trying to build, how large you want your website to be, how much money you've got to spend, what you want it to look like. There are 1,000 different options. I just always recommend people do their research. And if you need help building a website, talk to a specific web dev agency. Basically, you can SEO any website on most any platform. There isn't one that's better than the other. They all work.
Okay. And then how about going back to the disavow file? How long does that take to kind of be considered and looked at by Google once you submit it? Do you happen to have that, any knowledge on that?
Yeah, one of the things that they recently have said is that it takes anywhere from 3 days to a month. So unfortunately, it can take a long time, and that's not something that we really want to hear when we're hemorrhaging traffic. But that's why I think it's important to be taking the temperature of your website constantly. So the quicker you can understand, okay, this is my baseline, we've dropped below it, we got a penalty. We know what we need to do to get back to that. You can submit a lot quicker, and hopefully it's less time that you're out.
Great, and I think that's what everyone wants, less time to be dropping on those graphs that you showed us.
Of course.
Well, I think that's all the time we have today for questions, but I want to thank you, Brenna, for all the great information. And if anyone else has questions, feel free to email us, and we'll try to get them answered. But thanks, Brenna.
Thank you.
And please mark your calendar for our next webinar. It will be on July 10th, 11 a.m. again, and it will be by our digital advertising analyst, Natalie Beretta, and it will be about the clicks that got away. Use remarketing to capture conversion. So we set up a lot of really great remarketing campaigns for our clients, and we've been seeing some really good results. So Natalie will be sharing those and also how to set those up for yourself and capture those always elusive but always desired conversions. So join us for that. Registration will be open for that soon, and we'll go ahead and send a link for that. But we'll go ahead and send everyone a copy of this webinar recording along with the slides for SlideShare, and you can see them there. So thanks again. We appreciate everyone signing on today, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next month. Thanks.